Hey everyone, Effie here. Today I'm going to show you how to layer our blended peonies layering stencils. There are 6 9 by 12 inch stencils in this collection. There are 4 petal layers and 2 foliage layers. And each stencil has etched numbers on the bottom left hand corner. There are also etched brackets on the corners of your stencils, and these brackets are going to help guide you in your placement of your 8.5 by 11 inch piece of cardstock behind each stencil. Once you've blended all 6 stencils, the end result is a fully blended sheet of cardstock. All you need to do is cut it in half vertically and horizontally to make 4 A2 panels. And what you can do with those panels, you can just throw on a sentiment, or you can use the coordinating dies that are available separately to create clusters and different size cards. Now let's get blending. With stencil number 1, I'm going to go ahead and tape a piece of cardstock that's sized at 8.5 by 11 inches. And I'm just going to use those etched brackets as my guides as to where I'm going to tape my cardstock behind the stencil. And I'll use our soft Orchid dye ink and our standard size blending brushes. I do recommend using our wide flat stencil brushes for these 9 by 12 inch stencils because the stencils are just really large and it just takes longer when you're using these smaller brushes. At this time when I was filming, I couldn't find my pink wide flat brush, and then at some point I did switch over because it was just taking way too long to blend. But if that's all you have in your stash, you can see that it does work. But if you have the wide flat brushes, I would highly recommend using those for the larger size stencils. So once you're done blending stencil 1, you're going to take that stencil off, put stencil 2 in its place, use those etched brackets to help guide you in placement of that cardstock behind stencil 2. And I'm using Dolled Up for stencil 2, and at this point I switch over to the wider brush because it was just taking way too long. And I think I didn't use this brush in the beginning because this is a brush that I had designated as my red brush. I couldn't find my pink brush, but I was desperate at this point, so I just grabbed this one, and you can see there wasn't that much ink transfer from any residual red ink from the brush. And I generally stick with 1 brush per color family, but this was used for red inks and now I'm using it for pink inks, and you can see that the blending is totally fine. It's going great. So once I was finished with stencil number 2, I took that stencil off, put stencil 3 in its place, and for stencil 3 I used our Grand Fuchsia dye ink, and that process went quickly because I used a bigger brush. And now we're going to move on to stencil 4. This area right here, the top left quadrant of stencil 4, that is used for the floral centers. So when you're blending stencil 4 with our Plum wine ink, which is a nice deep tone, I'm not going to blend that Plum wine ink on the top left quadrant. I'll use it for everything else on this stencil. And then once I'm done with the floral layers on this stencil, I'm going to take that stencil off and just do selective ink blending using that top left quadrant and our amber citrine dye ink for the peony centers. So at this point, I switch over to the standard size brush because we're working with smaller areas. Now, if you decide to use that top left quadrant to fill in your peony centers, you're going to just begin rotating your cardstock and your stencil this way and that way to fill in all of the centers using the different open areas of that top left quadrant. Now, this area, or rather this step, is not completely necessary. You can always fill in your peony centers manually with markers or color pencils. So it's not necessary that you use this portion of the stencil for your peony centers. You can see that it does take a little bit of effort because you have to rotate this stencil or you have to rotate the cardstock and whatnot. So if that's not your jam, you can skip this step, color it in manually. Don't get mad at me because I had open space on the stencil, so I decided to include the peony centers. If I had included this on a totally different stencil, it would have increased the cost, and I didn't want to do that to you guys. So I threw these onto the free space on this layer. All right, so I'm using our amber citrine ink. Sometimes I use our lemon drop dye ink. I like to use a warm tone for our peony centers generally, but again, when you're blending, you have creative license over your panel and you can use whatever color you'd like. Any colors that I use in our layering videos, they're always color suggestions, but experiment with what you have in your stash. I've seen beautiful color combinations that I would never have used, so I love seeing that. Use your imagination, your creativity, use what you have in your stash. Post it on social media and be sure to tag us at the Ton Stamps on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or whatever, so that I can see what you guys are making. So once you're done with stencil 4, that's the last petal layer, we're going to go on to stencil 5. I used our raw sea glass for that first layer of the foliage. Once you're done with stencil 5, take that stencil off, replace it with stencil 6. This is the second foliage layer. We're using a darker green ink, which is our spring salad ink. And this is the last layer. Once you're done blending this darker green, we're going to take that stencil off, and you can see how absolutely gorgeous this set is. I am absolutely in love. You have 4 quads ready to go. You're going to cut it in half horizontally and vertically, and now we have 4 A2 panels. You can use these as is, throw on a sentiment, but I want to show you guys how these panels look when they're die cut with the coordinating dies, which are available separately. But check out these beautiful clusters. This little panel here, you could cut that in half and use the 2 borders separately or together, and check out these clusters. You can combine these clusters to make larger size cards. You can use them separately for smaller size cards, but we just created these clusters really easily with 6 stencils. And now you can check out all of the samples created by our design team members. And that's all from me today. I hope that this tutorial was helpful to you guys. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll be back with more videos. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.